All events depicted in this podcast are real. However, the names, locations, and some details have been changed for the privacy of those involved. Hello and welcome to Season 1, Episode 1 of Walking on Eggshells with an Emotional Vampire, a podcast that above all things is about family.
I've started recording. I'm on.
I've started recording now too.
I'm 7 seconds in, man. I'm doing it.
5 seconds in.
I'm 3 seconds in. Now I'm in 5 seconds.
9, 10, 11.
All right. Let's just talk and just see where it takes us, and we'll go from there. Let's just go. Ellie, Aria, and I have been toying with the idea of putting together a podcast for a while. It's not that any of us have any big ambitions to become podcasters, but when the material presented itself, a podcast seemed like the best medium to express it. It also seemed like more fun than just writing it down in a diary.
Actually, I have friends that, I chat to and they're like, I love hearing your stories about your family, what's going on,
No, I have the opposite reaction to that. I avoid telling my friends about this because I guess it's just too much to explain. I've always had the feeling that our family was a little unique. But all families are unique, right? It's just that whenever I would tell a family story to an outsider, they never seem to know how to react.
It's a lot of energy to explain it.
Well, and more, when I tell people, they just think I'm a psychopath. Like, I remember going to work after the old man had tried to commit suicide and they were looking at putting him in the nut house. And I went to work and I just told a few people and I was like, oh yeah, the old man tried to commit suicide last night. And they're like, oh my God, are you okay? Do you need our support? Do you need a counselor? And I'm like, no, it's not like that. He didn't try to commit suicide. He's just a fucking idiot. And they should put him in a nut house. He belongs in there. And then I could see them all looking at me, judging me. And they're like, oh my God, this is a terrible person. How could anyone feel that way about their poor suicidal father?
Yeah, and you're like, I'm just having a bitch. Like, seriously, these people are fucking crazy.
Exactly. And that's the thing. That's why we need each other. That's why we have our group chats and go. The three of us have always been good at keeping in contact. But more and more, our weekly sibling group chat feels more like therapy than just a catch up.
And I think like initially when we first kind of started talking about all of this stuff, I think we all felt a little bit alone because, all these things had been happening and you couldn't really talk to anybody about it.
And it was kind of how we were raised as well. We were raised to not talk about family business, even to each other. So it really wasn't until we had our sibling chats later on and we really started to delve into everything that happened and realize the motivations for everyone.
Well, that's it. Like, we're all got different parts of the story and we chat and then we piece it all together and then go, oh, so that's why he did that or that's why she did that. Like it's it's like we're little detectives because we've all got a piece of the story but we just haven't told each other, and then when we get together we're kind of like, now it's making sense. Well, as much sense as it can make.
We're like fucked up family detectives.
Yeah, that's how we tell it as if...
So that's where we stand. Just three siblings trying to get to the bottom of things. And what's the first case for the fucked up family detectives to investigate? Well, that's easy. It's the mystery of the Big Red Undies.
So, like when I was young, there was just always these big red undies drying in the shower.
But more on that later. For now, let's focus on a different story. Let's focus on two little girls, alone in a house, watching their mother walk out the front door for the last time.
And then I remember Ellie and I, we were looking out the window and we could see, biological mother walking away and both of us were in tears crying. And in my memory, I felt like we were alone, that we were by ourselves in the house. And, I just remember.
That's my older sister, Cara. And this harrowing tale is one of her earliest memories.
Why she walked away, why she wasn't there. Years later, I asked Dad and he said that apparently, and I don't know how true this story is, but apparently she went to jail, the biological mother. And
all of this happened before Aria and I were born. And thankfully, Ellie was too young to remember the day that her biological mother walked out, leaving her and Cara as wards of the state.
And said that we didn't have another parent. And that's how we became wards of the state. The next memory was Ellie and I were in a foster home.
While Ellie doesn't remember her biological mother, she does have some memories of the foster home. And both girls remember the day that Dad came to save them.
That is Dad coming to rescue us. Well, it'll always feel like a rescue to me because we're in this home and, all of a sudden Dad was there and Ellie and I were in his panel van and we were off, and that's all I remember. But I always, in my mind, Dad's always the hero because he saved us from that place. And
These early memories are pretty brutal, with 2 little girls shuffled between parents and foster homes, and one parent possibly doing jail time. But neither Cara nor Ellie seemed to judge either parent too harshly for their actions, and rather chalk them up to a result of their youth.
On my birth certificate, it says biological mum was 16, and I think Dad was 17, 18 or something like that. So they were only very young. They'd be lucky to hold down a job and put one foot in front of the other kind of thing.
Years later, Cara would meet up with her biological mother again. But the details of this reunion are something she prefers not to comment on. Ellie, on the other hand, never felt the urge to reconnect. Your youth and everything. You don't remember your biological mum at all, do you?
No, not at all. So there was one time when we were at Dad's house and he had some photos on his bench top and I was like, oh, who's that? And he's like, oh, that's your biological mum. And I was like, oh, right. And that was it. Like, I was like, oh, right. I didn't recognize the person in the photo. I don't remember what she looks like. If she walked past me in the street, I have no idea. I wouldn't have any idea that was her. So,
you never had the urge to get in touch with her?
No, I'm just not interested. If why bring up old stuff? And I had friends like, oh my God, why would you not want to know and whatever? And I was like, well, why would I want to know? If someone doesn't want to be in your life, I don't know, I just don't see the point of actually doing that.
Since recording this, information has surfaced about Ellie's mum's whereabouts, along with the existence of multiple other children scattered across the country. I've always secretly questioned Ellie's resolute stance on meeting her mum, and I thought these new siblings might soften her position on the matter.
I don't need her in my life or, that sort of thing. So, and I don't need to know if I've got any other brothers and sisters that I don't know and I've never grown up with. But
as it turns out, Ellie knows her own mind better than I do. And until things change, I'm more than happy to not share my brother privileges with anyone else. After he had taken them out of foster care, Dad brought the girls back to their new home, complete, with a new mum.
I don't remember meeting Mum, but I do remember the next thing that we were living in the house with her.
Was Dad a fisherman at this point?
When we moved in with Mum?
Yeah.
No, he was plastering.
Okay.
Yeah, this was inland Australia. Or he could have been a butcher at that time. I'm thinking plasterer though.
Dad was always gifted with his hands, and with the money he made plastering houses and slaughtering animals, he was able to build a small house for the family to live in. And for a time, this is how things went. But Dad had bigger plans. And with his new wife pregnant, the soon-to-be family of 5 made the move from the small outback town in Central Australia to a little fishing village on the bottom of the continent, into a house that Dad built himself.
It was a house that Dad built. So on the outside, it actually looked like a log cabin. So lots of, I guess, pine or whatever logs on the outside. And then the inside, there was also a lot of wood and stuff in there as well. So that was quite funny. But this house sat on, I think it was about 3 acres, maybe?
The house that Dad built was on a small farm. And for Cara, Ellie and I, our early childhood was spent helping with the upkeep of the animals. I remember there was a lot of collecting the eggs and feeding the sheep or milking the goats. Do you remember denacking the sheep?
Yes.
That must be illegal now, that device. I just remember, you put it around the sheep's testicles and then... how did it work? Was it like a rubber band or something?
You get it and you put your elastic band or whatever it is that they do, and then this, you press the thing and it opens up, and then you basically kind of cup the balls in it, and then you let it go or whatever, or you close it around the balls.
And it strangles them, right?
They eventually fall off.
Yeah, I remember us watching the sheep just jumping around the paddock, kicking their legs around, trying to get it off. They do not love it at all.
Well, I mean, would you enjoy it?
And now, with that important and barbaric farmyard procedure explained, let's go back to the beginning.
So, when I was young, there was just always these big red undies drying in the shower.
That's my youngest sister, Aria.
Yeah, I don't know what else am I meant to say about that.
When I was 12 and Aria still a toddler, we moved away from the little fishing village in Victoria to a surfing town on the east coast of New South Wales. And that's where the Big Red Undies story took place.
Yeah, there was always just undies drying in the shower. It was just a thing that was always there, and I always thought it was disgusting. Like, I look at them and they were just hanging in the shower. You'd have a shower and you'd see these undies hanging above your head while you're showering. And I always tried to move to the edge of the showers to make sure that they didn't drip on me.
Ah, Jesus. But it like, they'd always been there, right? Like, it wasn't anything that you questioned or anything.
Yeah, I didn't question it, ever. I was just like, yeah, there's some wet undies hanging. And then I'd try my best to avoid them whenever I was showering.
First of all, I just want to clarify. The undies in the shower weren't always red. They came in a variety of colours, never patterns or logos. It's just that when I brought up the story with Aria, it was the red undies that stood out in our memory. Before the topic came up, neither of us even knew the memory was there.
No, I'd never thought about it. When you mentioned it, I had this vivid image of red underwear in my head that I didn't even realise I had in there. And it was the tight, it wasn't like the briefs or anything, it was like the Speedo style underwear. It was like, what the fuck? How do I remember these so vividly and have never thought about it my whole life until now?
Aria's knowledge of the mysterious underwear in the shower was limited. It was clear that they were Dad's, but apart from the strange fact that Dad was washing his undergarments in the family shower, she didn't know much more about them than their general appearance.
And a lot of the time they'd been worn for a while. They didn't look new.
Unlike Aria, the knowledge of the soggy underwear that I'd spent my entire young life showering next to was more detailed, and spoke to the type of person that Dad was. And interestingly, the person that Mum was also. I always thought that Dad washed his underwear in the shower because of me. And that's because that's what he told me. In my early teens, I said to him, why do you wash your underwear in the shower? Why don't you put it in the wash like everyone else? And he said, it's because of you. And I said, because of me? And he said, yeah. He said, when you were a kid, you kept soiling your underwear and putting it in the wash without telling anyone. And then your mother thought it was me, so she got angry at me. And so I said, fine, you won't have to wash my underwear again. And from that point on, he washed all of his own underwear in the shower. For Aria and I, those big moist undies had been a simple fact of our time living with the parents, as regular as the colour of the paint on the walls. But what started as a simple memory, taken as truth, turned into a stream of questions and some unexpected conclusions. Just imagine, he didn't put his underwear in the wash for like 7 years, and she didn't wash his underwear. Like, the determination, the conviction to actually stick with that for 7 years, that's wild.
Just how stubborn they both can be. And that she put up with these underwear hanging in the shower for that long as well.
100%. By year 3, you would say, okay, it's time to put the white flag up on the red undies. Let's stop this. Let's just go back to being a normal couple. Or just say, you know what? At the time, I didn't want to get anyone in trouble, but it wasn't me that crapped in their pants. It was the 10-year-old son. I was trying to be a good guy, but it's time to move on.
But also, if it wasn't him, then obviously the skid marks stopped because it never came up in conversation to you or anything. So I think it was him. I think he was leaving skid marks.
No, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this lately. So initially, obviously, I thought it was me. But then after we discovered everything, I thought, well, it's got to be Dad. Because, I mean, how similar a grown man and 10-year-old kid underwear? They can't be that similar. But then I thought, if Dad started washing his undies in the shower, and then I kept putting my dirty undies into the wash, then if Mum came out and said, look, you've done it again, then he would have said, no, my undies are clean and they're in the shower.
Okay.
But, I mean, that obviously didn't happen. Or maybe Mum is that stubborn that she did find the undies in there, but then she just hid them and pretended like she didn't because she didn't want to give Dad the victory. But in the end, I don't know, like, it seems like it probably was him and he's just hiding his tracks with this whole story to me, but at the same time, I just don't know. It's impossible to tell with any certainty. Having discussed the matter at length, Aria decided to go directly to the source for answers.
I asked Mum about the underwear after we'd talked about it, and she told me pretty much the same story, that she was sick and tired of finding underwear with skid marks. It had been happening for years or something, and she finally confronted him, and she said that he told her that it was you that had done it, but she would never have to wash his underwear again.
Wait, I always thought that Dad somehow took the rap for this to protect me, but you're saying that So he basically just straight away said, well, it's not me, it's Lucas.
Yeah.
And then what, Mum just didn't believe him? Like, how does that work? She's just like, no, it's you, it's not him. I know you shit your pants every night, you filthy animal. Hang on a second. So that means that even after he said that it was me, she didn't believe him.
That's the whole conversation was with her, because she was so disturbed that I'd asked about it.
Yeah, but, I mean, I think that's the answer. I think it was him. He was shitting his pants. This had nothing to do with me. And by the way, how did you bring that up with Mum? How do you even have that conversation?
Because I said, Lucas and I were talking about, we've got this memory of Dad's like red underwear hanging in the shower. And she was like, why are you talking about this? And we're like, well, I was like, we just want to know why that happened.
To get to this point in the Undergate conspiracy investigation, Aria and I had been going back and forth over the phone for a few weeks. We hadn't bothered involving Ellie in the calls, because it didn't affect her. She had already moved out of home when all this began.
No, I didn't see any of that. But it was funny when I heard about it.
But once Ellie was involved in the conversation, it led down a path that none of us expected, that started way back in the early days of Mum and Dad's marriage, in the little fishing village, at the house that Dad built.
When I was younger and stuff, like, I was super shy,
You wouldn't know it talking to Ellie today, but as a child, and even into her early adulthood, confidence was something she struggled with.
I was being shy, but there was nothing I could do to fix it, if you know what I mean. Like, I didn't know how to come out of my shell a little bit, and inside I felt like I was a great person who could chat and all that sort of stuff, but it just never came out on the outside, if you know what I mean. So
it's not 100% clear where Ellie's confidence issues come from, but it seems like a likely guess that it had something to do with her early experiences being shuffled between parents and foster homes.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's something to do from when I was younger or something, because I was so young and getting a new mum basically and all this sort of stuff. I don't know whether that kind of affected that, or whether it was just I was just a shy kid. I struggled with that, I guess.
Having shared my childhood with Ellie, I'm well aware of her struggles with confidence. They were a sad fact of her youth, but at the same time, a big part of the reason why she grew up with the character and charisma that she has, and I wouldn't change that for anything. What I was not aware of, however, was how Ellie's confidence issues, mixed with Mum's clean underwear obsession, had collided with unthinkable results.
Yeah, Mum, I guess, was a little bit obsessed with, clean underwear. I don't know. So there was a point where, because I assume this comes from childhood, there was a point where I had trouble going to the toilet, and I'd have like little skitties on my underwear. So in all Mum's wisdom and whatever, she obviously got really sick of it, like sick of seeing this. So she'd obviously been checking every time I'd put underwear in the washing or whatever, and she'd obviously been checking, and they might have been slightly dirty or something. So she kept them all, however many pairs of underwear, I don't remember exactly how many, and then she made me put one on my head and then go out into the front yard, and like most homes, I guess, have like a tap out the front of the house. Well, I guess most homes, I don't know, that house in particular did have a tap out the front. So she made me go out the front with my little bucket of undies and a scrubbing brush and some soap, I guess, and have a pair on my head and sit out the front and scrub my underwear at the front of the house, I guess, in full view of all the neighbours and everything. Not that there was many at that time, and to be honest, they probably didn't even look at me, but I don't know whether it was a thing to embarrass me so I would never do it again, or I don't know whether it was just a punishment. She was sick of seeing it, was like, right, you've got to get out there and scrub them yourself because I'm over this or whatever.
It's a horrible story about a young girl struggling with her self-esteem, being tormented by her evil stepmother. And when Ellie told me, I was shaken to my core. But more than shaken, I was concerned. I was concerned that the lighthearted podcast episode I was trying to record had gone completely off the rails, and now I was stuck with content that I was totally unprepared for. Underwear in the shower? That's something I can deal with. But this was actual childhood trauma.
After the event, obviously, I was probably pretty traumatized because, that's the kind of personality I was. But
what should I do? Did Ellie need my support? Did she need a counsellor?
Afterwards, now looking back, I'm like, oh my God, sitting at the front with the undies on and looking cool with my,
Jesus.
with my undies on and my, hanging out the front for the neighbours to check me out.
What is wrong with you? You know what? On second thoughts, scrap that. I think she's going to be fine.
Check me out with my undie hat.
I guess what I was left with after all these discoveries was more questions about Mum. Maybe she was the driving force behind this whole underwear conspiracy. Obviously the whole undie hat punishment isn't a normal parental thing to do, but I mean, you're a mum. Do you have such a clear idea of which of your kids is throwing shitty underwear in the wash?
I don't normally I would never ever go through each of my kids' undies and my partner's undies and go, oh, there's a skid mark on that, I'm going to tell them about it, I mean, but I feel like she's always had this little weird undie, I was going to call it a fetish, but it's not really a fetish, is it?
Actually, I thought you were going to say fetish then. I was kind of hoping you were going to say fetish. Maybe a fixation. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. Let's call it a fixation. This weird undie fixation that she has.
Clearly, during this conversation about Mum's undie fixation, Ellie was in good spirits. But I was still curious if she was holding some deep-seated resentment towards Mum about the whole thing.
I don't blame her because I'm like, well, I don't know if they had the tools and the knowledge. I mean, and, especially her, like she took us on from when we were young children and she was only pretty young herself. So, I don't blame her for that.
I remember Mum telling me that when she was in school, the teachers used to smack the students over the back of the hand with a wooden cane if they misbehaved. And they did this in front of the entire classroom. Maybe this kind of public disciplining was a generational thing that hadn't aged well.
Maybe that's just the way they did it, that's just the punishment that they used. Whereas, I mean, today it would be something completely different. I mean, it's more of a friendly approach, more as like, oh, here, have a book, take it into the bathroom, see how you go. Do you know what I mean? Relax, you don't need to be stressed about it. That sort of thing. Whereas I don't blame her for doing that. I was probably initially angry because I knew that she had this undie thing. But, I don't blame her for dealing with it in that way because I guess that's all she knew.
I was curious if Dad had any knowledge about the undie hat punishment. Ellie said she didn't remember him having anything to do with it. But at the same time, she also couldn't be certain if he knew about it or not.
I don't remember him being around that much. I just remember being with Mum quite a lot, like just us and her.
During this period, Dad was working on the fishing boats, and he would be away for days at a time.
Just remember Dad working a lot kind of thing. I mean, especially in the day, he was never there a lot in the day.
With Dad gone much of the time, Mum was left to maintain the animals on the property, as well as raise a baby and 2 stepdaughters on her own. This is a big ask for anyone, but especially someone in their early 20s. And it made me wonder, was this the life that she envisioned for herself? I remember Mum telling me that before her and Dad got married, she used to be a backup singer in a local band. And then if they didn't end up together, she would have been a famous singer. And I remember that, and then it makes me think that, moving to the little fishing village, getting the hobby farm, and Dad being a fisherman, that was definitely Dad's dream. But I'm not sure, was that Mum's dream as well?
No, that's the thing. Yeah. Hats off to her because that's like a really hard thing to do. Like, get with someone and then, take care of their 2 young children. And yeah, I don't know, give up a job, I guess, like whatever she was doing before that. Like, I would never do that.
If someone were able to look inside my head and see what I was thinking, they would see a large white wall. The wall would be covered with pictures and photographs. Some would have writing on them in red permanent marker. There would certainly be a picture of Mum on the wall somewhere, with the word fetish scribbled underneath it, and then crossed out and neatly replaced with the word fixation. Attaching all the pictures together would be lines of string, held in place with thumbtacks, and at the centre of all this would be a pair of big, red undies. This scene is very dramatic, but also very confusing, because, to be honest, I don't know what I think. And what's the solution when I'm stuck in my own head and can't seem to make sense of anything? Well, that's easy. That means it's time for a group chat with the 2 people that know me the best.
Lucas, where are you? Lucas left the chat. He doesn't want to talk to us anymore.
What the hell are you guys doing in here?
Doesn't want to talk about the undie hat.
I get cut off for 2 minutes, and this is what you guys do? Is this what you talk about when I'm not here?
No, it was just us laughing about Dad.
And I made up a little song as well.
Oh no, I heard the song. You freak. But if we're past that, I guess the first thing that I wanted to talk about was, did we think this all started with Dad shitting his pants? And I mean, do we think that Dad actually did shit his pants at all?
Absolutely.
100% I think Dad shit his pants.
I completely agree.
Really? But because then that's a grown man who's got some sort of hygiene problems. Like, do we really think that Dad has a problem shitting his pants?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would have been every single time because, I mean, you've got a problem if that's happening. You need to,
Yeah, I don't know if that's the most obvious answer for me. Like, sure, it's possible, but is the most obvious thing that Dad had this hygiene problem and that set all these dominoes in motion? Or is it that me being a kid hadn't worked it out yet, and then I sort of started this inadvertently?
I definitely think that it was definitely Dad, because there's no way you confuse the two different sized underwears.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not being funny, but you can tell the difference between a 9 and 10-year-old's undies and, 40-year-old's undies, right? Like, because they're a little bit bigger than a 10-year-old.
There's a philosophical and scientific rule known as Occam's razor. It is the principle that the explanation that requires the fewest assumptions is usually correct.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not being
Up
funny,
until this
you
point
can
in the
tell
group chat,
difference
we had
between
all
9 and
applied
10-year-old's
Occam's razor,
undies
and logic was prevailing. But that was all about to disappear with the introduction of one person. Yeah, you're right, but I think the problem is that you're being too logical about this. You're looking at the facts and trying to extrapolate an answer, but the problem is that you have this massive outlier here, which is mum. There's another philosophical and scientific principle known as Hanlon's razor. It states that one should never attribute to malice what can be adequately explained by stupidity. It's one of my favourite principles, and I quote it all the time. But when it comes to mum, I always seem to apply it in reverse. And mum's perception and the way she handles things, that sort of throws everything out. Because I think that it's completely possible that she just got sick of seeing shitty underwear in the wash, and it was more satisfying for her to blame Dad and argue with him about it than it was for her to blame me, because she wouldn't get anything out of that.
But I mean, I guess she can get quite, she can get quite annoyed with something quickly if maybe it's happening a couple of times, and if she's checking the underwear every time she puts it in the wash, which I again do not understand.
Well, you don't remember the undie bucket?
I know the undie bucket. I used to see it.
She soaked it. I hated it. She still has it.
She still has it?
Yeah, I saw it when I was feeding the cat while she was away. And I was like, is she just going to leave this undie bucket in here for the week that she's away just soaking?
But this is what I'm talking about. Like, I don't think that there's a need to soak underwear. And it's like she created this reason to have to check the underwear, and then got angry about checking the underwear, and then picked a fight about checking the underwear. And it's that process. That's what I sort of see. And I feel like maybe that's what set this whole thing in motion.
That undie bucket, it all relates.
The origins of the undie hat conspiracy, while fun to discuss, seem to be one of those what came first, the chicken or the egg scenarios, that we would never truly solve. And to be honest, finding out the instigating event didn't seem that important anyway. What seemed more important was to delve into the motivations behind the events. Because Dad has so much pride, you think about it, if he did have an accident a couple of times, and then Mum called him out, he would have overreacted as well,
Maybe it happened and Dad was embarrassed. He just chucked it in the wash thinking nothing. And then when Mum caught him, it would have been so embarrassing that he immediately blamed you. But to cover his ass, he decided he was going to wash the underwear in the shower for the rest of time because he never wanted to feel that embarrassment again.
Yeah, I completely think that embarrassment would have been a big motivation for Dad. He would have just went from 0 to 100 when Mum brought it up, and then that was it. It was done. And once he gives his word, Dad never backs down on his word. And so from there, the other thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was how we all feel about this undie hat punishment.
Imagine if she gave Dad that punishment. Just collect. He's just sitting out the front. Sorry.
Aria's suggestion of Dad's big reds being taken out of the shower and put on his head proved a little too much for the three of us to handle,
Sorry. It just came to my mind.
and derailed the conversation for the next 15 minutes.
Imagine with his undies on his head. With the big red undie hat on his head.
But thankfully, eventually, we were able to get back on track.
Anyways, continue.
Thank you, Aria. I'm allowed to continue now. Okay. What I have been thinking of is, like when we had animals and they did something wrong, Mum would always punish them by kind of using whatever they did wrong against them. Like if the dog shit on the rug, she'd rub its nose in it. And it kind of got me thinking, is Mum using the undies on Ellie's head, is that kind of her giving the same punishment to Ellie that she would to the dog, you know?
Yeah, she was rubbing my nose in it.
Yeah, kind of.
Does that actually work though? Does the dog, like, if you rub its nose in it, does that work?
No, it teaches the dog to eat their own shit, which is probably why our dogs ate their own shit.
Is that true that it teaches them that?
It's true. It's a real thing, yeah.
This actually makes me think, and I can't believe I've never asked this before, but did the undie hat punishment work on you, Ellie?
Probably not, no. I had issues. I don't remember, but do you know what it did? Do you know what it was actually? So instead of putting my underwear in the washing, I used to hide it. So I'm going to say it didn't work.
So that started after that, because I remember Mum talking about you hiding your underwear. It's pretty bad, man.
I mean, I know that sounds bad, but it's not like I
don't mean you.
hid them and wore them again. I hid them until she wasn't around or whatever.
No, we're not thinking it's bad for you.
No, not at all.
At all. It's bad because of what Mum did, and Mum made you so scared of underwear.
Yeah. So I'd wait till she wasn't around and then I'd go and wash them. I was like a little weirdo.
For all of our childhood, we had a chihuahua named Bjorn. Bjorn was everything you could want in a dog. He was well trained, obedient, calm, and loyal. And we all adored him. But for as long as I can remember, Dad was at war with Bjorn over one thing. Bjorn used to always crap on that concrete entertainment area, and it used to make Dad crazy. Dad tried everything to deter the little dog from doing this, even spraying the concrete flooring with various deterrents. He even got a bunch of hot chili, mixed it with water and blended it up, and then put it in a spray bottle and sprayed the whole deck with this chili water trying to deter. There was another deterrent that he tried also, and you might guess the results. And of course he tried rubbing Bjorn's nose in it as well. But I remember I was in bed one morning, it was really early, and then I could hear Dad outside, and all I hear is him go, "Bjorn, no, no." And then there's a pause, and then I just hear, and I run outside and I'm like, what is going on? And Dad's leant over the fence, heaving into the neighbor's yard. And he said, that fucking dog, it was shitting on the concrete again, and I yelled at it to stop, and then it ate it. When I had told this story over the group chat, it had been because it seemed to prove Aria's earlier point and illustrate the negative effects of rubbing your pet's nose in it.
Yeah, because he was scared. He was like, oh God, I shouldn't have done that. Quick, eat that shit up.
But what I hadn't realised is that it proved some other things too. In fact, it kind of gave some clarity to the whole story. No, Ellie, I think you're right. He wasn't eating it because he liked it. He was eating it because he was ashamed, and he was trying to hide his shame.
Yeah, see? And the only way to hide it, because they can't work out to dig it up, to like bury it or whatever, they eat it.
Yeah, but this connects the whole thing. Like you've got Bjorn, when he was confronted with his shame, he hid it in the only way he knew how.
It did.
Then when you were confronted by it, you literally hid it, like hid it in the cupboard.
Oh my God.
And then when Dad was confronted by it, he came up with this big elaborate undie washing scenario so he'd never have to face his shame again. It's a young girl, a dog, and a grown man, all motivated by the same thing, and all reacting in arguably the same way. When I set out to uncover the mystery of the Big Red Undies, I'm not sure what I expected. I knew there was something interesting there to investigate, but I would never have suspected that it ended up spanning generations, unlocking hidden family secrets and revealing the motivations of beloved, long-past pets. And I certainly wouldn't have imagined that after everything was said and done, I'd be able to boil down all the lessons learned into a piece of advice as simple as don't rub each other's nose in it. But you know what? That's just the kind of thing that the fucked up family detectives live for. This episode of Walking on Eggshells with an Emotional Vampire is dedicated to Bjorn, the Wonder Dog, who even after all these years gone is still helping us out. If you'd like to see Bjorn in action, and maybe even leave a message or a story immortalising your own lost pet, there's a link in the description that will take you to a tribute video that Aria made for Bjorn in 2009, shortly after he passed. Coming up next time, we take a closer look at the charismatic patriarch that is our father. Our property sat at the back of a cul-de-sac, and our dad beat this man bloody up and down this cul-de-sac until finally the police came and took him to the hospital, where he had his jaw wired back together. As legend has it, there was a white truck parked in the cul-de-sac that night, and Dad repeatedly slammed the man's face into the side of the truck, leaving bloody red face prints behind. The following day, nosy townspeople would drive out to see the face prints before they were forced to wash them off. That's next week on Walking on Eggshells with an Emotional Vampire. If you enjoyed today's episode, why not let us know about it by dropping us a line at eggshellvampire@gmail.com. That's eggshellvampire@gmail.com. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you listen. And most importantly, tell your friends about us. We want to be heard. Walking on Eggshells with an Emotional Vampire is written, produced, and recorded by me, Lucas Shaw. Thanks for listening.